This is CNN Breaking News.
And welcome back to all of you watching us here in the United States, Canada, and around the world. I'm Kim Brunhuber, and this is CNN Newsroom. We're following fast-moving developments out of Kabul, Afghanistan. CNN crews shot this video a short time ago. It's believed that the helicopter you see there is one of the U.S. choppers shuttling employees from the embassy to evacuate them from the country. A U.S. official tells CNN that evacuations are well underway with the goal to get U.S. embassy personnel out by Tuesday morning, if not sooner. The embassy says it expects to be running evacuations 24/7 very soon. All right, we're going to bring in our Clarissa Ward, who is in Kabul. Clarissa, we're hearing conflicting reports of how close the Taliban are to Kabul itself. Can you give us an update of what you know?
Yeah, so it's a really fast-moving situation at the moment. The Taliban has just released a statement essentially saying that they don't want bloodshed, that their fighters, when they come into the city, will not be permitted to search businesses, to fight or kill or hurt people. They said that they want this to be a peaceful transition, essentially, that they guarantee the rights of those who do not fight them. They warned people who would fight them that they should not attempt to do so, that they should simply try to leave with other ordinary civilians, and that they will be forgiven, essentially indicating that there might be some kind of an amnesty. We know that the Taliban are at the gates of the city of Kabul. There have been numerous reports suggesting there may be pockets of them already in the capital, though CNN has not been able to confirm that. But certainly the effect here on the ground is just one of absolute panic and chaos. Real gridlock on the streets, unbelievable, choked with traffic, people with luggage hanging out their windows, trying to get out of the city, trying to figure out what their next move is. We've heard reports from a team who was at the airport this morning, again, of just chaotic long lines as people desperately try to get out of the country. And you mentioned those U.S. evacuations. Sources familiar with that saying there is a concern that there could be a distinct threat against Americans. So they have rapidly expedited those evacuations. A U.S. official saying that they hope for those evacuations to be going 24/7, all through the day and all through the night within the next 24 hours. The goal is in the next 72 hours to get everybody out of that U.S. embassy. And then from there, looking at getting out as well all U.S. Citizens, including a number, of course, of dual nationals. Then looking at people who have their SIV paperwork, people who worked with the U.S. military here or the U.S. embassy here, and from then also looking at getting out Afghan employees of the U.S. embassy. So you're looking at potentially tens of thousands of people who need to be evacuated. And it's difficult, really, honestly, just to describe how quickly this is happening, how chaotic the situation is becoming, and how much panic there is as it becomes increasingly clear that the Afghan forces and Afghan army are not going to be able to defend Kabul.
Are there any signs that they're making any attempt to do so? Is there any sign of resistance? After all, we saw so many cities lately falling without shots being fired.
And that's what the Taliban is saying they would like to see repeated. We saw an image, a very striking image from Nangarhar of the governor, the Afghan Republic governor, sitting with the Taliban governor together at the governor's residence. And this is the model that the Taliban would like to see replicated. No need to fire any shots. We're coming in, we're taking over, and then we can start to hash out some kind of a deal. From the government's response, we've heard shockingly little. I would just say yesterday, Ashraf Ghani, the Afghan president, made a statement. He said that he was working on organizing Afghan forces, that he was in consultations with the elders. But, you know, what many people here are saying is that essentially he's rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, that the moment for consulting with village elders is far behind us now, and it becomes rapidly unclear what Ghani's political future will be.
The most dire military predictions had been that Kabul would be surrounded and fall between 30 and 90 days. Well, the enemy, as you say, is basically at the gates right now. You said that the U.S. Was trying to get its personnel out by Tuesday. I mean, will they have that long?
Well, I mean, this is exactly what people like the U.S. envoy, special envoy Zalmay Khalilzad, who's in Doha right now, are trying to negotiate with the Taliban. Basically, let us get our people out over the next 72 hours and do not do anything to try to harm them. And that is why this has now been expedited in such a dramatic fashion. You've got 5,000 U.S. troops either in or on their way into the country. So the potential for some kind of conflagration or clash between the Taliban and those U.S. troops is very real. So efforts are underway earnestly now in Doha to do everything possible to try to avert some kind of a crisis or some kind of a clash. As I mentioned before, sources familiar with what's going on say that there is a very real and direct threat to Americans at the moment. But from the Taliban side, based on conversations we've had with them, they simply just want Americans out. And they're unlikely, in their words, to do anything that could jeopardize that exodus. So again, a very fluid situation on the ground, very difficult to predict exactly what's going to happen, but certainly a lot of panic and chaos on the streets of Kabul now.
Yeah, to that I want to ask you because certainly in addition to the population of the city, thousands of refugees have been streaming into the city trying to avoid the Taliban. Now they're here. Talk to me a bit about the feeling there in the streets, and especially from women and girls, because clearly many of them have lived through when the Taliban controlled the country, and certainly they wouldn't want to see all of the gains that they've made in the last 20 years disappear, but certainly that must be the fear right now.
So more than 15,000 internally displaced people have entered Kabul just in the last few months during the fighting. And we actually visited a park yesterday that is sort of become an informal IDP camp. People living in tremendously harsh conditions, sleeping in tents. There's no running water. There isn't really an official infrastructure because it's not really an official camp. And there's more and more people arriving every day, just putting up tents in different parks across the city. Now, of course, these people have nowhere to go. And as you mentioned, for many of them, the fear is so high right now. If you have had anything to do with Afghan security services, with the U.S. Embassy, with U.S. NGOs even, a lot of charities trying desperately to get their local people out of the country. And I should mention that right now, the only way out of the country is through Kabul airport, because essentially with the city surrounded, with much of the rest of the country taken by the Taliban, border crossings on all sides under the control of the Taliban, that really is your only option. And for most Afghans, getting on a flight is not an option. We had a team this morning at the passport office. Absolute chaos. Thousands of people desperately jostling, waiting for hours, trying to get the appropriate documentation that might afford them then the opportunity to get out of the country. The question, of course, also becomes, when do civilian flights stop running? When does the threat become so high that the airport shuts down? And again, that only contributing to this sense of chaos and sense of people just not having any idea where to turn to, where to go, what the plan is. Absolute silence from the Afghan government in this really dire historic moment.